Good morning and thanks for stopping by my channel. I'm here in Kansas where it seems like it's been raining for a month solid and there's nothing to do outside. So I decided I would come out to the garage and work on some tiny trucks today. I've got this Samix brass portal cover kit. Now this is just the front kit. They make a front kit and a back kit. I just wanted to add a little weight to the front. So it has the front portal housing knuckles, steering knuckles, whatever you want to call them. Also has the portal covers. Those are both brass. I went with the Samix because they're the ones that I think are the least brassy looking. I kind of prefer my trucks to look scale as much as possible, at least. And you know, you see a lot of guys that have brass hanging all over their trucks everywhere, and it just doesn't look all that realistic. I may end up going back and, you know, painting. They've got little, you know, brass colored lettering and highlights on them that I may end up going back and coloring those in, painting them black something. We'll see how I like them. Also comes with these scale brake rotors. I'm not against scale brake rotors. In reality, I wouldn't paint my calipers bright red. So again, maybe down the road, it looks like those will actually come off. They're screwed on there. Sorry, I keep getting out of the frame there, but those are screwed on there. So it looks like they would probably come off. So I may either just take those off altogether, or I may come back and, you know, paint them gray or silver or something that seems more realistic. But before I get too far into that, I just wanted to go over the truck. I haven't really documented anything so far as building this truck. It's actually fairly close to stock. I've made a few small modifications to it, and I always kind of like seeing what other guys have done to their trucks. So I'm gonna do kind of a walk around, I guess you would call it, and you know, just show what modifications I've done so far. And from here on out, I'll probably try to document anything that I do to it in the future. Probably the first thing that's noticeable are the wheels and tires. The wheels and tires are a SSD steel D-Window wheel with a Rock Beast. They're a smaller tire than what came on this truck, and it wasn't a performance modification. The tires that come on this truck are the Traxxas Canyon Trails, and they actually perform really well in my experience. The only problem that I had was the amount of body rub that they had was really excessive right out of the box. I wasn't a big fan of that. And I didn't really want to cut up this body because the reason I got this truck in the first place is just because I liked the style of the old K5 Blazers. For, you know, a ready-to-run truck, I thought it was pretty scale looking. I wanted to keep it as scale as possible. Now, I very much liked the wheels that came on it. I thought they were very true to the original wheels that would have come on this truck in a 1-to-1 version. The Canyon Trail tires were just way too big. So again, they're SSD steel wheel, Pitbull Rock Beast, and they do have Crawler Innovations foams in them. These foams are specifically made for the Rock Beast tires in this size. They're fairly firm. They seem to work really good, but these tires are vented, and when you go through water, they don't soak it up and tend to stink like normal foams will. So that's the reason I went with those. The only other thing that's really noticeable is going to be the winch. The winch is actually mounted inside. I'll pop the body and show that here in a minute. It's a RC4 drive Warn 9.5 scale winch. And beyond that is going to be the lighting. I've got rock lights and I've got the headlights on there, obviously. The rock lights I've got on one button on my remote. Headlights are on a separate button. And what I've actually got here is I've got a Fly Sky that has been hacked to, this is just the normal GT3 that everybody's using. This one has been hacked to 8 channels. So I've actually got the lights on these buttons right here. So there's the rock lights, there's headlights. And unlike the original remote, I can control the differential lockers with their own buttons. So you've got the back locker is going to be engaged, disengaged, front locker engage, disengage, And down here is going to be my 2-speed control is right there. So that's shifts the transmission, or I'm sorry, the transfer case. And then this button up top is going to be my winch control. Alright, so now I'm going to crack the body off and you can see what I've got going on in there. One more modification I did on the body was I painted the inside with a black, just a black polycarbonate paint for a couple reasons. One, the white inside to me didn't look real scale at one time. I actually had a interior in this truck. It's not in there now, obviously, but I will be putting one in down the road. And I like having the interior blacked out. I just think it looks a little more scale, realistic. Also, up in front here, I have these, I can't remember. I wanted to say maybe they're CCHand brand headlight buckets, and they're an aluminum, like a little billet aluminum headlight bucket with the LED that I've installed in them. Or 2 LEDs. You got one for the marker lights, one for the headlights, and they're bright silver, and you could see them through the wheel wells. And again, I didn't really care for that, so I just kind of blacked all that stuff out. My wiring management is just absolutely abysmal. I understand that, but for right now, I've kind of just got everything zip tied in there as best I can. As far as chassis and electronics modifications go, this one is primarily stock. Again, my wiring management is horrible. I've just kind of zip tied things around there as best I can. I've got a lot going on in here wiring wise, so I gotta come up with a better way to take care of all that. But for right now, I know a lot of guys complain about the factory motor and speed controller. I've had 0 problems with them. I am running this one on 2S. I've never run this on 3S. I haven't seen a need for it. This is just a fun trail truck that I like to play around with. So, you know, 2S does the job on this pretty well. And as far as batteries go, I actually run these little Venom, little small packs up front here. And this one is a 2200 amp hour battery, and I get over an hour on this little 2S battery in this truck. So they work really well for me. That's probably one of the main performance modifications, I guess I would call it, that I've done to this truck, is that I have removed the factory battery tray that normally goes in here. It actually worked okay if you used one of these small batteries down in the lower location. But if you tried to put like a big, 5,000 amp hour, 6,200 amp hour batteries, I have some big hard case batteries in there. They set up really high and they made the truck pretty tippy. These little 22 amp hour batteries, like I said, down in the tray worked pretty well, but it actually seems to work even better just sticking it up here on the factory little battery tray that come up in the front of it, and getting rid of that altogether. In the front is the winch. It's just mounted on that factory battery tray, and I just screwed it right to it, and I dremeled a slot in the front bumper, put this little RC4WD Poison Spider fairlead on there, and it works perfectly well. Other than that, the only changes that I've made to the electronics is the 8-channel Fly Sky receiver. It's right in there, and it absolutely does not fit in the factory receiver box, so I've taken the factory receiver box out. I have coated this with a conformal coating, took it apart, coated the inside of the receiver so it's waterproof. Same thing on the this little RC4 drive winch controller is what I'm using right now. I actually, as a general rule, I will use a Hobbywing 1060 speed controller as a winch control, and that's what I've got on my other trucks, and I think I've even got an extra one that I bought for this truck, but this one hasn't failed yet. So once this one fails, I will replace it with the Hobbywing 1060. Until then, I had it, so I'm just going to run it. Still got the factory steering servo. I haven't had a bit of problem with it. I know a lot of guys complain about it, but as far as a ready to run truck, This is, sorry about that. This is probably, that was just me stepping on the body I threw on the floor. So as far as a ready to run truck, the steering servo in this is really not horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. So I haven't seen any need to upgrade it until it fails. All the micro servos for the shift and diff locks, all that is factory stuff. I do have mounted right here, I don't know if you can see the little red lights on it or not, probably not. But right here I have 2 light controllers, and again those have been sprayed. I kind of filled, they're a little board wrapped in a shrink wrap basically, and what I've done is I've taken some Corrosion X and sprayed in there to waterproof those, but one of those is for the rock lights, the other one's for the headlights, and these are like little $10 light controllers off of Amazon. I've used quite a few of them and they actually work very well. Again, so I'm just gonna, until I have a problem with them, I'm just gonna roll with them. As far as lighting goes, I've got 2 rock lights, or 2 little LEDs in the front wheel wells, and then I've got 1 in the back wheel wells on each side, as well as the, again, I've got the front, I've just got an LED that I bought off of eBay. I bought like a whole 100 in a box for like $5. I've got yellow ones in the marker lights and the large white ones in the headlights, and again I believe it's a CCHand or CCHand light buckets, billet light buckets that I have those mounted in, and those light buckets are great. They make the headlights a lot brighter than they were just putting LEDs in the factory little plastic light plates that came with the body. As far as the truck goes, that's about it. There's really, everything else is pretty much stock. Again, I did, at one time I had an interior in here. It was just like a cheap little plastic eBay, it was a knockoff of the Proline interior. And it actually worked just fine. It's not a great look. I wanted to build something a little more scale, so I think I'm probably gonna build something out of, I don't know. I might build something, or I might just buy another little molded one and put it in there. I haven't really decided yet. Like I said, this is just kind of a play toy trail truck that I like to mess with, so I don't know if I want to get too crazy. I'm not looking for scale points or anything like that. I like them to look scale, but like I said, it's not like it's a comp truck or anything that I'm worried about getting extra points for having a deep interior. I just want something that looks a little better. And one of these days I might do that, and I'll show that when I do. But that's about it as far as the walk around, and now I'm going to move on to doing the portal upgrade. So on the portal covers, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by popping the wheels off. And once I get the wheels off, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the portals altogether, disassemble them, and I imagine that they're going to be pretty cruddy. Probably have gotten water in them. The grease is the factory grease. I've actually never had these portals apart, so they still have the factory grease in them. It's probably wet, dirty, nasty, so this is a good opportunity to do some maintenance on the truck as well while I've got it apart. So now I've got it flipped over and the wheels off out of the way. I noticed one other small modification I forgot to mention. The diff covers are an RC4WD ARB scale diff cover, and again, not a performance mod. The only reason I did those is because I'm not a fan of the big chrome plastic covers that come on this TRX4. So I just did that because I thought it made it look a little more scale. If I had one of these trucks in real life, it wouldn't have, you know, big ass chrome diff covers. So that was the reasoning for that. Just make it look a little better in my opinion. So in order to swap out these portal covers, I just need to get the portals off the axle. I think what I'm going to try to do is, I think if I remove the panhard mount from the axle And I'm going to remove the steering arm from the servo, and then I think the lower or the upper link, take that screw out, and I believe that'll allow me to just kind of roll the axle over, because all I really need to be able to do is to get to the bottom or top, however you look at it, the bolt, because you got this one bolt here and then one bolt there that holds the portal on, and the whole portal should pop right off at that point, but you just can't get to the top one real easy. So I'm gonna just try that. I'm gonna pop the pan hard mount off of the axle first. All right, get the pan hard out of the way. Remove the steering arm off of the servo. Get that out of the way. And then I think I should be able to just pop this off and roll the axle over. Alright, let's see what that gained us. Yeah, in reality, almost nothing. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the screws for the shocks and just get all this out of the way. Okay, with that out of the way, that gave me a little bit more wiggle room. Get all those links off of there. Alright, yeah. Now I'm just going to roll it over and remove these bottom bolts. And the top bolts, and the portal should come right off. Now there is a little bushing in there because I just heard it drop. There it is. So careful you don't lose those little guys. Alright, now I'm going to have to take the steering arm off of one of the portals to allow the axles to slide out. Alright. And that is all there is to that. That's one portal off, two portals off. Now I can go ahead and start tearing the actual portals down and doing the install. I'm going to go ahead and get this chassis out of the way so I have a little more room to work, and I'll get back to it. Now that I have the portals off of the axle, I'm going to go ahead and split the two portal halves. You've got two screws right here on the front of the portal, and then you have 6 screws on the back of the portal, and removing those is going to allow me to split the portal cases apart. Okay, now I've got all those screws out. That should allow me to separate the portal halves, and all these screws are the same size here, so you don't need to worry about mixing those up or anything. Just set those off to the side. And on this one, if I remove this, remove the lock nut for, I'm sorry, it's on the other side. If I remove the hex, then that'll allow that stub shaft to just slide on out of there. So I'm just going to remove that set screw, get that out of the way, get the hex out of the way, and then that just pushes right out. So we're just going to set that off to the side. I'm actually pretty surprised. This is the original grease. I've never had these apart, so this is the original grease in here. I expected it to be just full of mud and nasty, but it doesn't look too bad. I'll clean it up. We're going to re-grease everything. So I'll set those off now. Inside your old portal housings, you got 2 bearings in here, and you're going to need to reuse all the bearings. The new kit doesn't come with bearings, so those push out of there easily. This one here, you can't get to the back of it, so you just kind of got to pry it out of there. I'm too lazy to go grab a pick, so I'm just going to use whatever I got handy here. Here we go. There's those bearings, and that's all there is for that portal half, so we're not going to need that anymore. Your axle shaft is retained by 3 screws right here. So we're just going to go ahead and pull those out, and those are holding that bearing in. So once we get these 3 screws out of the way, that whole bearing will slide out with the shaft as an assembly. All right, with those screws out of the way, just give that a little push, and the whole bearing axle comes right on out. Okay, I'm going to set that to the side. And again, you've got a bearing inside here that we're going to need to reuse. I just give that a little tap on the bench to make it drop down, then I can grab it, and then I get to chase it across the garage floor because I don't know where that just went. So that's pretty much it as far as the teardown goes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take these pieces and I'm going to go off camera here and clean all that stuff up and get them ready to go back together. Alright, so I've got everything ready to go back together now. Basically all I did, I just kind of took them and wiped them down. The grease and everything that was in here was the original grease, but it really wasn't that nasty. I expected to have a bunch of water and mud and everything to clean off. Normally I would probably take these over, spray them all down with brake clean real good before I put them back together, but really it didn't need it. I just wiped them down and they all look just fine. In order to go back together to start, I'm just going to go ahead and press these bearings back into the housings. Maybe. There we go. That one was being a pain in the ass. It should just drop down in there real easy. And then what I just use this cheap marine grease that I get from O'Reilly Auto Parts. I know a lot of guys will have varying opinions, and if anybody wants to comment and let me know what you prefer, kind of curious what other guys are using, but I know a lot of people will use you know, special RC car grease. I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that there's a need for it. I'm sure it works just fine, so anybody getting all pissed off that, you know, I don't like their grease, I'm sure it's great. But me, you get a little itty bitty tub for, you know, 10-15 bucks or whatever, or I think I get this whole tub or tube for a couple dollars that will last me possibly the rest of my life. So that's all I do. I grease them up real good. And on this one, the axle just goes in from the back. Press that bearing in there. And then the other shaft and gear, install on top of it. And then go ahead and reinstall the other half of the portal cover. And of course that's going to push out the back. Get back on here, bastard. All right. Now on the screws that hold this together, they give, in the package, they have 2 extra of these little tiny screws. I really have no idea what they're for. They don't seem to fit anything on here. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, maybe I'll figure out by accident what they're for later. But I'm gonna go ahead and Loctite these screws. As a general rule, the rule is that if the screw is going into metal, then you want to Loctite it. As long as it's going into plastic, you're perfectly fine not using any kind of thread locker. I don't really know what the rule is on brass, to be honest. I mean, brass is soft enough, I feel that it probably would be just fine if I didn't Loctite them. But I definitely don't think it's going to hurt anything if I do. So I'm going to go ahead and err on the side of caution. I'm going to put a little drop of Loctite on them. As you notice, there's only 2 screws. That's because the third one went skipping across the garage floor. So I get to go find that here in a minute. So for now, we're just going to put those 2 in, because that damn thing could be anywhere. I think it actually probably rolled over under the car, so I'm probably screwed. Same deal. I'm going to go ahead and just put just a little drop of Loctite on each one of these guys. And what I like to do is I like to use the, I got this Milwaukee, get it in the frame there, got this Milwaukee power driver that I like to use for this stuff. And if you're going to use one of these power drivers, I highly recommend getting a set of these MIP, see if I can get to focus there, these MIP driver bits. I've got a set of, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them that will do everything you need to do on one of these RC cars, but these are a lifesaver. But I'd just take them and I'm not trying to tighten them with the driver. You definitely want to be careful about that, especially going into plastic. I'll just run them down and then I'll come back with my driver and snug them down. That's all it really needs. And then we got these 6 on the back right here. Again, just gonna put one little drop of Loctite and just use the blue stuff. Don't bother with the red stuff. You put the red stuff on there, you're gonna have to use heat to get it back apart, and some of these parts that's probably not a great idea, so there's just no need for it. So short of that missing bolt, all I got to do is reinstall the hex. And then we can install the brake rotor and it's ready to go back on the truck. Alright, so for these brake rotors that they include in the kit, you actually, you can put it either direction you want. They're both different, so you have one that's a right, one that's a left. So you can put it however you want. To me, I wanted to put them on the sides where, like, this is the left side, so this will be towards the back of the truck. To me, that seems the most realistic. If you want them towards the front of the truck, I'd say no harm, no foul. Do it however you want. It's your truck. But I'm just going to do that now. What you have 2 these little tiny screws right here that go on the top of the rotor. It comes with 2 different size screws. So the 2 small ones go on the top, and then you've got a larger screw that goes in the bottom hole right here. And again, I'm just going to put one little drop of blue Loctite on there just to be safe. Keep that thing from backing out and getting hung up on something, causing a problem. And that is pretty much all there is to it. I think I probably, not counting the time it's going to take me to go find that screw I lost. I mean, once you get the portals off the truck, I don't know, what is it, 5 minutes per side or so to to rebuild one of these. So it's not a huge time-consuming mod, but I think it'll help this truck. I think it just needs a little bit more weight on the front tires. And so we'll see how these work out. I went ahead and popped that cover off just to see what the grease in there looked like, and the grease in there is not pretty, so I'm going to go ahead, since I've got it all apart anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take the opportunity to do a little maintenance on it. So on these TRX4s that have the front and rear lockers, you just pop this little locker actuator arm out of the way, and the whole locker comes out. And I'm just going to take this off camera here for a minute, and I'm going to take the bearings off of it. The bearings are totally smooth, they're good, but I'm going to take the locker itself, I'm going to go over and clean it off a little bit, and then I'll pack that thing with some new grease. And one thing I do like to do on these, if you look inside the axle housing here, there's really nothing that keeps the water from going right up that axle tube and getting into your differential. So what I like to do is I like to actually pack the axle tubes, pack some grease in there, and that'll help keep some of that water working its way up and getting into your locker. All right, so I got that locker all cleaned up, repacked it with grease, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my little differential cover here. And again, being that that is an aluminum piece, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little dab of Loctite on each one of those screws, just for good measure. I don't think they're at any risk of backing out, but I figure it can't hurt. And these, you just got these 4 screws back here that hold that diff cover on. Alright, so that's all serviced. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Alright, so I'll move on to putting the portals back onto the axle housing. And one thing, when you take this apart, you've got these 2 little bushings that go in the steering knuckle. So when you take that apart, those are going to drop out. So just be real careful when you're doing this that you don't lose those things, because then you're going to end up having a bad day, having to go rolling around on the floor trying to find those things. And I'm just going to put a good amount of grease on the axle shaft itself. It's probably unnecessary, but like I said, on these, the way these axles are designed, there's really nothing that keeps the water from going up into that locker. And I figured the more grease that I have in the actual axle tube, that acts as sort of a seal to help mitigate some of that crap getting in there. Again, you got these 2 little bushings on each side. And again, I just put 1 little drop of Loctite on there. Not 100% sure if it's necessary. I think I've said that about 8 times now, but I'm curious, other guys that have more experience than I do with brass pieces, leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on that, because quite honestly, I don't know that I've ever heard whether you need to treat brass like the same you would as plastic, or the same that you would as if it was you know, aluminum or any other kind of metal. So yeah, 1 screw in the bottom, 1 screw in the top, and the portal is back on the axle. Alright, so that side's reinstalled, so I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the process for the other side. And once I get that done, I'll go ahead and start reinstalling the steering links. But once the portals are all back on the axles, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe everything down, get all the excess grease that I managed to get up in where those little CVD joints are. I don't want a bunch of extra grease right there. I want the grease in the tubes to seal, but I don't want a bunch of extra grease right there, because it's just going to attract dust and tear things up. And now that I've got that back together, I'm just going to go ahead and reinstall my steering links and my suspension links, and that should pretty much be it. Should be a nice little upgrade, but we'll see. I'll have to take it out one of these days and see how much of a difference it makes. But that's pretty much it. That should be the whole process. Probably, you know, set out about an hour of your day to take the whole thing apart, clean everything up. Good time to get in there and do a little bit of maintenance on the differential like I did. I'm going to put this back together and I'll be right back. And since everybody knows that no tiny truck video will be complete without a gratuitous flex shot, here she is all back together. Pretty happy with the way it turned out. The Samix kit came with all the hardware necessary to install it. It looks pretty good. I definitely prefer the black over, you know, a lot of brass pieces hanging down that stand out like a sore thumb to me. I prefer my trucks to look a little more scale. So I like the blacked out brass pieces, and the parts that you can see that are brass, the lettering and that type of thing, aren't really visible once the wheels are back on the truck. So I'm pretty happy about that. Again, my only real complaint would be the red calipers. So I may address that later down the road, but just looking at it from the outside, they're barely visible. So if it starts to annoy me, I might go back in, take them off and paint them, or I might just leave it the way it is. I appreciate anybody that stopped by and took the time to watch the video. And if it was at all useful, please like the video, subscribe to my channel. There's not a lot on there right now, but I do have a few trucks that I'm working on, and I do plan to put some more tiny truck content on. I've got plenty of projects going, so it's just a matter of finding time to sit down and work on them and make the videos. Please comment if anybody found this at all useful. I'd like to know about it. Thanks again. Bye.